The call came at 22:47. The voice on the other end was stripped of all inflection by the encryption. A digital ghost. It spoke only 3 words. The package is mobile. In the back of the darkened Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, parked on a cobblestone side street in Istanbul's Fatih district, the team leader, Yair, did not react. His eyes remained fixed on the 3 monitors in front of him. One showed a grainy thermal image of a 3rd-floor apartment window, now cold and empty. The second showed a schematic of the surrounding city blocks, a single red dot now blinking, moving west. The 3rd monitor was a simple countdown timer. It read 120 seconds. It was the window. The time it would take for the target's armored Audi A8L to travel from the underground garage to the main thoroughfare, the Adnan Menderes Boulevard. After that, he would be lost in the chaos of Istanbul's late-night traffic, a ghost in a river of headlights. Protocol was clear, etched into Yair's psyche by years of training. An unscheduled move by a high-value target this late in the operational cycle meant a compromise was not just possible, but probable. Protocol dictated an immediate, unequivocal abort. The mission, 6 months in the planning, a multi-million-dollar expenditure of resources and political capital, would be scrubbed. The assets on the ground would melt away into the Turkish night. The window of opportunity, perhaps the last of its kind, would close forever. Yair's finger hovered over the flush-mounted red button on the console, the abort switch. Its plastic surface was cool, inert. His training, his experience, every instinct screamed at him to press it. But on the main monitor, the red dot wasn't heading for the boulevard. It had taken a sharp, unscheduled left turn into a series of smaller, quieter streets. It was moving away from its expected route, away from its security detail's rendezvous point. It was moving into the pre-designated kill box for a contingency plan so audacious, so high risk, it had been classified as Level 0, a theoretical option not meant for actual execution. The timer on the screen hit 90 seconds. Yair's earpiece crackled. It was Amos, the ground team lead, his voice a low whisper from a rooftop 2 blocks away, filtered through a bone conduction microphone that picked up only the vibrations of his skull. He's alone. No follow car. I repeat, the escort is not present. He's breaking his own protocol. Yair looked at the schematic. The red dot was crawling through a maze of streets designed by the Ottoman Empire. Too narrow for speed, too confusing for an easy pursuit. It was a tactical blunder by the target, a fatal mistake, or a trap. The timer hit 60 seconds. Yair's mind, a machine honed for this exact purpose, processed the variables. The probability of a sophisticated trap laid by a joint IRGC-MIT task force was 18%. The probability that this was a genuine, unprecedented opportunity born of the target's arrogance was 82%. The intelligence that had launched this entire operation was based on a single, uncorroborated human source. The potential reward was the answer to a question that had haunted an entire nation for decades. The potential cost was a diplomatic firestorm with Turkey, the exposure of Mossad's entire regional network, and the lives of the 5 operators in this van, and the 3 more on the ground. The timer hit 30 seconds. Yair opened his own encrypted channel, a tight beam laser transmission aimed at a micro-repeater on a nearby minaret. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was the voice of pure calculation. All stations, this is control. Execute Plan Binyamin, I repeat. We are green on Binyamin. A wave of silent, furious activity erupted in the van. The side door slid open. The mission was a go. The target was an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps general. The objective was not assassination. It was abduction. And the reason for it all was a ghost, an Israeli Air Force navigator named Ron Arad, who had disappeared over Lebanon 35 years ago. This operation wasn't born in a boardroom. It was forged from 3.5 decades of failure, a national wound that refused to heal. October 16, 1986. An Israeli Air Force F-4 Phantom, call sign Tavor 2-1, suffers a premature bomb detonation during a strike on PLO targets near Sidon, Lebanon. The pilot, Yishai Aviram, is rescued by a Sayeret Matkal team in a daring combat search and rescue operation that saw 2 commandos wounded. The navigator, Captain Ron Arad, ejects and is captured by the Shiite militia, Amal. This is the last verifiable fact. What followed was a descent into a labyrinth of shadows, misinformation, and despair. Arad became a political commodity, a human bargaining chip. He was held by Amal security chief Mustafa Dirani, then allegedly sold to Hezbollah for a sum rumored to be $300,000, and then transferred to the Iranians as a gift. Letters and photos surfaced, proof of life. But then, silence. For years, Israeli intelligence chased whispers. They paid millions to informants who provided doctored photographs and fabricated intelligence. They launched operations in Lebanon, snatching key figures like Dirani and Sheikh Abdel Karim Obeid, pulling them from their beds in the dead of night in operations that were masterpieces of covert action. These men were interrogated for years at a secret facility known as Installation 1391. They provided pieces of the puzzle, confirming Iranian involvement, but never the whole picture. The trail always led back to one place, Tehran, to the opaque and ruthless inner circle of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. By the early 2000s, the Ron Arad file was a monument to institutional pain within the Israeli intelligence community. It was a cold case of the highest national importance. Every new Mossad director was briefed on it on their first day. Every new lead, no matter how faint, was pursued with obsessive dedication. The file contained thousands of pages, satellite photos of suspected holding sites, transcripts of intercepted communications, financial analyses of ransom demands, psychological profiles of captors. It was a library of dead ends. The intelligence failure was not a single event, but a slow, grinding erosion of hope. The official assessment shifted from captured to missing, to, by 2016, a quiet admission that he was likely deceased. But likely was not an acceptable answer. The informal national covenant in Israel is absolute. No soldier is left behind, dead or alive. Certainty was required. The problem was the source. All intelligence on Arad came from second or third-hand sources, from Lebanese proxies, from paid informants, from defectors with an agenda. To get the truth, they needed to get to the source. They needed a man from the inner circle of the IRGC. Not a proxy, not a middleman, but a decision-maker. This was considered impossible. The IRGC's senior command was one of the most protected, insulated groups of individuals on the planet. They traveled rarely, and when they did, it was under extreme security protocols within friendly territory, like Syria or Lebanon. Kidnapping one from Iranian soil was a fantasy. The mission needed a new chessboard, a new set of players, and a trigger. The players for this new game were selected not for their rank, but for their specific esoteric skills. The mission director was a man known only as Ephraim. the deputy head of Caesarea, Mossad's Special Operations Division. Ephraim's defining achievement was Operation Tipped Kettle in 2012. An Iranian cargo ship, the Yasmin, was carrying a consignment of North Korean-made M302 rockets destined for Hezbollah. A military strike was deemed too politically inflammatory. Ephraim's team, instead of sinking the ship, stole it. They hacked the Panamanian shipping registry, creating a ghost company that legally purchased the Yasmin mid-voyage. They then created a series of forged shipping manifests and maritime law loopholes, combined with a fake distress call from a sister ship that lured the Yasmin into a slightly altered route. This new route took it through a corridor of international waters where a team of Shayatet 13 commandos boarded it, not with guns, but with legal paperwork from a Panamanian maritime court, declaring the cargo illegal and seizing the vessel. The ship was rerouted to a friendly port without a shot fired. Ephraim's specialty was not brute force, but systemic manipulation. He saw geopolitics as a set of interlocking systems, and his talent was finding the single vulnerability that could cause the entire structure to fail in his favor. He was a ghost, a man who had no public profile, who ran the world's most dangerous operations from a sterile, windowless room in Tel Aviv. His selection signaled that this mission would be one of intellect and precision, not just firepower. The team leader on the ground was Yair, 42 years old, a former Sayeret Matkal operator. Yair's legend was forged in the scorching heat of the Sudanese desert in 2009. Flashback. The sun was a physical weight, pressing down on the Land Cruiser. Inside, the air conditioning had died 6 hours ago. The temperature was 51 degrees Celsius. Yair and his two-man team, Avi and Barak, were caked in a mixture of sweat and fine red dust. For 3 days, they had been tailing a convoy of 7 trucks carrying Iranian Fajr 5 rockets, destined for smugglers who would take them to Gaza. Their mission was simple: plant a magnetic GPS tracker and get out. The tracker, a state-of-the-art device, had been attached during a staged traffic stop. It had failed 2 hours later, its signal vanishing from the satellite uplink. Aborting meant the rockets would reach Hamas. Yair made a decision that violated every protocol. "We go manual," he had said, his voice raspy. They tailed the convoy visually for the first day, staying miles back, a heat haze mirage on the horizon. But on the second day, the convoy entered the vast, featureless expanse of the Bayuda Desert. There were no roads, no landmarks. The smugglers were using a network of ancient caravan trails known only to them. This is where Yair's unique skill came into play. He had spent a year on a specialized course with Bedouin trackers in the Negev, learning skills considered obsolete. He got out of the vehicle, knelt, and studied the tire tracks in the sand. 7 trucks, he whispered to Avi. The lead vehicle is heavier on the left side. The driver is compensating. The third truck has a slow leak in the rear right tire. They'll have to stop in the next 100 kilometers. He was reading the desert like a page of text. They drove without lights, navigating by the stars, a skill Yair had mastered in Matkal. They rationed their water, each sip measured. On the 3rd day, their own vehicle began to fail. A cracked radiator hose. They were losing water fast. Barak, the comms specialist, managed to get a single, high-burst data transmission out on the satellite phone before it overheated and died. It contained their last known coordinates and the convoy's projected path, based on Yair's tracking. He had given the Air Force a search box, a 50-square-mile patch of nothing. "It's enough," Yair said, looking at the sky. They abandoned their vehicle and took shelter under a rock outcropping, their water gone, their mission technically a failure. 12 hours later, as delirium began to set in, they heard the faint, piercing shriek of F-15I ROM fighter jets. On the horizon, a series of brilliant orange flashes blossomed in the dusk. The convoy had been found. The airstrike was successful. A rescue helicopter picked them up an hour later. Yair's skill was improvisation under impossible pressure. He was a master of adapting a failing plan in real time. His presence on this mission meant the mission was expected to go wrong, and he was the insurance policy. End flashback. The team's technical specialist was Dalia, 31 years old, recruited from Unit 8200, the IDF's Signal Intelligence Corps. Her signature achievement was the Phantom Network exploit. A hostile nation had built a communications network for its air defense system that was completely air-gapped, meaning it was not physically connected to the internet and theoretically impossible to hack remotely. Dalia discovered that the system's high-powered microwave antennas emitted a faint, almost undetectable harmonic resonance, a micro-vibration in a specific frequency. Over 6 months, she and her lab team developed a tool. From a high-altitude drone flying miles away, they aimed a focused energy beam at the antenna, encoding data packets into minute fluctuations of that same resonant frequency. The antenna, designed to receive radio waves, interpreted these vibrations as legitimate internal data. Slowly, packet by packet, they built a backdoor into the system. On the day of the test, Dalia took control of the entire network, creating ghost targets on their radar screens and making their missile batteries appear offline. Her skill was seeing the unseen, exploiting physics itself as a pathway for infiltration. She could turn any piece of technology, friendly or hostile, into a weapon or listening device. The muscle and surveillance lead was Amos, a veteran of the Kaidan unit, the division responsible for targeted assassinations. Amos was different. He was a master of deep-covered tradecraft. His most noted success was spending 2 years integrated into a radical Salafist cell in Hamburg, posing as a disaffected Moroccan immigrant named Khalid. He didn't just learn the language. He learned the local dialect, the slang, the specific religious interpretations of their radical cleric. He prayed with them, ate with them, shared their grievances. He rose through their ranks by being more dedicated, more pious than anyone else. He identified their external handler from the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, a man who used the cover of a cultural attaché at the Iranian consulate. Amos didn't just report the handler's identity. He orchestrated a scenario where the handler, believing Amos was his most trusted operative, met him in a public park to deliver funds for a planned attack. The meeting was photographed by a long-range Kaidan surveillance team. The funds were marked. The intelligence was passed to the German BND, who arrested the handler and rolled up the entire network without any hint of Israeli involvement. Amos could become invisible in any crowd. His skill was in human patience and an encyclopedic knowledge of human behavior, knowing how a person would react to any given stimulus before they did. These 4 individuals, the strategist, the field commander, the tech wizard, and the ghost, formed the core of the operation. They were the scalpel. Now they needed a place to cut. The chessboard was Turkey, a landscape of shifting alliances and treacherous neutrality. Since the early 2000s, the relationship between Israel and Turkey, once a strong strategic partnership, had soured. Under Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey was reasserting itself as a regional power, often in direct opposition to Israeli interests. Yet, The two countries maintained a complex web of intelligence sharing and economic ties. It was a cold peace, a state of constant, low-grade friction. For Mossad, Turkey was a gray zone. The Turkish National Intelligence Organization, the MIT, was a formidable and sophisticated service. An Israeli operation discovered by the MIT would be a diplomatic catastrophe. But this same complexity made Turkey the perfect hunting ground. Iran also viewed Turkey as a critical gray zone. It was a vital hub for bypassing sanctions and holding clandestine meetings. This created an environment of intense, silent warfare. Mossad, the CIA, Russia's SVR, Iran's MOAs, and Turkey's MIT were all active in the same cities, constantly watching each other. Yair's team was aware of at least two other major foreign operations running concurrently. The CIA's Operation Bosphorus Gambit was an attempt to track the flow of Russian money and weapons to Serbian nationalist groups through Turkish banks. The German BND was running Operation Rheingold, targeting PKK financiers operating out of Istanbul's Grand Bazaar. These operations created a dangerous level of noise, flooding the city with spooks and counter-spies, increasing the risk of accidental exposure or a blue-on-blue incident. The tension escalated on February 15, 2007. A man named Ali Reza Asghari, a former Iranian deputy defense minister and a high-ranking IRGC general, checked into the Ceylan Intercontinental Hotel in Istanbul. 2 days later, he vanished. Asghari was a treasure trove of information on Iran's nuclear program. His disappearance triggered a panic in Tehran. The Iranians were convinced he had defected, spirited away by a Western intelligence agency. They sent their best counterintelligence teams to Turkey to investigate. This sudden, massive influx of high-level Iranian intelligence officers into Istanbul was the trigger Ephraim had been waiting for. It was a strategic distraction. While Iran's security apparatus was consumed with the Asghari case, they would be vulnerable. It was a perfect storm. The genesis of the specific mission arrived 2 weeks after Asghari's disappearance. A long-dormant Mossad asset inside a mid-level Iranian diplomatic post in Ankara was reactivated. The asset, codenamed Cyrus, reported that Tehran was dispatching a very specific man to lead the Asghari investigation in Turkey, IRGC Brigadier General Hamid Rezai. The name sent a shockwave through the Ron Arad file team. Rezai was not just any general. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, he had been the IRGC's chief liaison officer to Hezbollah in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. He was the man who controlled the flow of money, weapons, and orders from Tehran to Hezbollah. Multiple intelligence reports, including the debriefings of Mustafa Dirani, placed Rezai as the man who took direct custody of Ron Arad from Hezbollah sometime in 1990. He was the last known Iranian official to have seen Arad alive. He was the source. For 20 years, Rezai had been untouchable. Now, he was coming to Istanbul. He was leaving his fortress and walking onto Ephraim's chessboard. The objective crystallized instantly. They had to take him off the street, get him out of Turkey, and bring him to a black site for interrogation. The mission, codenamed Last Witness, was born. The problem was Rezai. He was a spy master, paranoid, disciplined, and traveled with a dedicated team of counter-surveillance experts. His protocol was legendary. He never slept in the same place for more than 2 nights. He never took the same route twice. Ephraim's team had a theoretical window of 3 to 4 weeks. The Prime Minister's office approved the mission in a meeting that lasted less than 10 minutes. The only question asked was, what is the probability of success? Ephraim's answer was direct, less than 30%. but it is the only percent we have. The plan in motion began not with operators, but with data. For 72 hours, Dahlia and her team initiated a full-spectrum digital assault on Istanbul. They tapped into municipal traffic camera feeds, cross-referencing them with flight manifests. They accessed cellular tower data, looking for patterns of Iranian diplomatic phones. They hacked hotel reservation systems. The first break came from a food delivery service. A specific high-end Persian restaurant received an unusually large, cash-only order for a private residence in the wealthy Akarkent district. Dahlia's team geolocated the delivery address. It was a villa leased a month prior by a shell company traced back to an IRGC front organization. This was Rezai's probable safe house. Amos and a two-man advance team were the first to be inserted. Amos entered Turkey from Georgia on a German passport. His partners entered from Greece on French and Canadian passports. They met on the third car of the Marmaray commuter train during its underwater transit of the Bosphorus Strait. Their first task was to establish a primary surveillance post. The villa was a fortress. Direct assault was impossible. Amos found a solution 2 properties down, a half-finished construction site. Posing as a prospective buyer, Amos was given a full tour. While the agent was distracted, Amos used a laser measurement tool to get the exact dimensions and line-of-sight angles to the target villa. The next day, a shell company controlled by Mossad's logistics division, Telem, purchased the property in cash. The construction site became Station Alpha. Over the next 4 nights, Dahlia's equipment arrived, disguised as construction supplies. A high-powered directional microphone was concealed inside an industrial air conditioning unit. A thermal imaging camera was built into the chassis of a generator. Dahlia herself arrived, posing as an interior designer. For a week, they gathered intelligence. They logged vehicles, mapped guard patrols, and listened. They confirmed Rezai was a hard target. A direct snatch was suicide. They needed to isolate him. Their new plan required a human asset, someone who could get close to Rezai. Amos identified a potential recruit, Kemal, a low-level security guard at a private business club in the Levant district, where Rezai had held 2 meetings. A background check revealed Kemal had a daughter with a rare blood disorder requiring expensive, unapproved treatments from Germany. He was also in debt to loan sharks. He was vulnerable. Amos made the approach not as an Israeli agent, but as a representative of a European pharmaceutical charity. The meeting took place in a noisy tea garden. Amos offered to pay for the daughter's entire treatment and clear Kemal's debts. In return, he wanted one small favor. "The man you know as Mr. Jafari," Amos said, using Rezai's cover name. "He is a competitor of my employer's. We need to know who he is meeting." Kemal was terrified, but trapped. He agreed. The preliminary mission was to place a button bug on Rezai's coat. The device was a marvel of miniaturization, a fully functional audio transmitter with a 12-hour battery, disguised as an ordinary suit button. Kemal's job was to switch it with a real button on the coat Rezai left at the club's cloakroom. The night of the operation, Amos and his team were parked a block away, monitoring Kemal through a micro-earpiece. "He's on the move," Amos whispered as Rezai entered the club. Kemal's hands trembled as he approached the cloakroom. He had the button in his palm. "Easy, Kemal. You are just doing your job." Just as Kemal reached for the coat, another of Rezai's bodyguards entered the cloakroom unexpectedly. "What are you doing?" the guard barked in Turkish. Kemal froze. Just Just organizing the coats, sir, he stammered. The guard stared at him, suspicious. Empty your pockets. Panic surged through the comms. Abort, Kemal. Ditch the device, Amos ordered. Kemal, thinking fast, dropped the button bug and crushed it under his heel, pretending to have stumbled. Sorry, clumsy of me, he said. The guard grunted, unconvinced, but found nothing on him and left. The mission was a failure, but Kemal was not compromised. The attempt, however, proved one thing. They could not get close enough to plant a device. They would have to rely entirely on remote tracking. The technology deployed was a blend of cutting-edge systems and calculated risks. Dalia's primary communication system, Chameleon, hijacked civilian cell phone calls to piggyback encrypted data packets, making them invisible to MIT surveillance. The tracking solution was a synthetic isotope gel, a small, clear, adhesive substance containing a unique, inert molecular signature. The plan was for an operator on a motorcycle to perform a brush pass and smear the gel on Rezai's car. A network of sensors disguised as municipal air quality monitors would then track the signature. The gel's limitation was its 12-hour lifespan. The final piece of tech was the facial recognition system in Yair's van, linked to compromised CCTV feeds across Istanbul. It was this system that uncovered the first major setback. It flagged a recurring, unidentified visitor to Rezai's villa. A cross-reference with a shared MI6 file identified him. A Turkish underworld fixer known to work for the MIT. Rezai was meeting with Turkish intelligence. The mission was now twice as dangerous. Yair and Ephraim debated aborting. The new hypothesis, based on Amos's behavioral analysis of the surveillance footage, was that Rezai was conducting a private side deal, hiding it from his own people. The mission was still on, but they had to assume they were being watched by two hostile services. The second setback was even more alarming. A municipal utility van parked across from Station Alpha. Amos identified the technicians as MIT counter-surveillance. They had found the observation post. An immediate, silent evacuation was ordered. Dalia initiated a data wipe protocol. A thermite charge hidden inside the main computer server ignited, melting the hard drives and processors into a useless slag of silicon and metal. They had lost their primary eyes on the target. This led to the third, and most severe, complication. 2 days before their new operational window, the Turkish Interior Minister announced a major citywide anti-terror security drill in Istanbul to begin in 48 hours. It was a lockdown. Police and MIT roadblocks would be everywhere. Movement would be impossible. The announcement sent a shockwave through the team. It could be a coincidence, or it could be the MIT closing the net, having detected their presence. A frantic debate erupted on the encrypted channel between Yair in Istanbul and Ephraim in Tel Aviv. We have to scrub, Yair stated flatly. Exfil is impossible. They've boxed us in. Negative. Ephraim's voice came back, calm and cold. Rezai is scheduled to leave Turkey in 72 hours. This is our last chance. The drill is our chance. A chance for what? To get caught in a roadblock and start a firefight on the Bosphorus Bridge? Yair shot back. The drill creates chaos, Ephraim argued. It provides cover. The police will be focused on their checkpoints, not a single van moving on a side street. You wanted to isolate the target. The city is about to do it for you. Amos cut in. Ephraim is right. We changed the exfil plan. We don't run for the coast, we go to ground. We use the Hedgehog safe house. The Hedgehog was a deep black site, a small apartment in a crowded residential block that had been prepped years ago for just such a contingency. It was designed to be invisible, a place an entire team could disappear for weeks. The new plan was born of desperation. Snatch Rezai as the city locked down, then drive into the heart of the lockdown itself and vanish inside the hedgehog, waiting for the drill to end. It was an insane gamble. Which brought them to tonight. To the van on the cobblestone street. To Plan Binyamin. As Yair gave the go-ahead, a motorcycle detached itself from a group of delivery bikes 3 blocks away. The rider, Maya, was a Kedon operator. She weaved through traffic, closing on Rezai's Audi. In her hand was the gel applicator, a small, pressurized device disguised as a can of pepper spray. As she pulled alongside the Audi, she pressed the button. Nothing happened. A tiny red LED on the device blinked twice. Failure. Control, applicator is dead. Maya's voice was tense in Yair's ear. In the van, Dahlia swore. Maya, talk to me. Is the LED blinking or solid? Blinking. Twice, then a pause. Pressure seal. Dahlia diagnosed instantly. The canister isn't seated correctly. You have to reset it. Pop the top cover. I'm in traffic, Dahlia. I have maybe 30 seconds before he makes the main road. Pop the cover. You'll see a small silver pin. You have a paperclip? Always, Maya replied. Her voice strained as she steered the bike with her knees, fumbling with the device with one hand. Okay, cover's off. I see the pin. Use the paperclip to push it down. Hard. You'll hear a click. That's the canister reseating. Maya guided the bike through a narrow gap between a bus and a taxi, her heart pounding. She jammed the paperclip into the tiny hole. A faint click echoed in her helmet mic. The LED turned solid green. We are live, she breathed. She accelerated, the Audi now just 1 car ahead. This was the only chance. She pulled alongside, her arm outstretched, and squeezed the trigger. A fine, almost invisible mist sprayed onto the rear fender of the Audi, just above the wheel well. On Dahlia's screen, a new icon flared to life. They had him. Tag is active, Dahlia confirmed. He's all yours, Yair. The chase was on.